Welcome to Focus on the Falls. I'm John Mercure, talking early literacy. There's a lot of stuff we're going to discuss today and a lot of guests that I want to introduce you to. Corey Gall is the superintendent of schools. Next to Corey is Tina Poznansky, Brad Hoffman, principals in a couple of our schools. Next to them is Sarah Dorr. Sarah, thank you for being here. And Casey Blakowiak, Director of Curriculum and Learning. Good to have all of you here. Thank you so much. Early literacy, let's talk literacy a little bit. I want to go around the horn and ask what you guys have been reading lately. Let's start with you, the boss man.
Oh, I got
last good book you have read or you're reading now?
Yeah, I got a great book for Christmas from my son called The Optimist, which is just short stories about fly fishing, which is a real passion of mine. Just a good escape book, so that I enjoyed that.
Kind of get away a little bit.
Yes.
All right, Tina, what's been on your reading list?
So we have read The Giving Tree. So my daughter was home from school, and it's just one of my children's favorite books. So we always read it, around the holiday time as well.
Brad, what are you reading?
Well, it's not high literature, but Leonardo the Terrible Monster was probably the last book that I read. In an elementary school, that's what we read.
Did you do the voices? Did you?
I'm pretty good at it.
Okay. Yeah, I bet you are. All right, what about you, Sarah?
I just recently actually had a book read to me, and it was called After the Fall. It's a story of resilience and overcoming obstacles about Humpty Dumpty after he falls off the wall.
Oh, that sounds pretty good.
It's a really wonderful book.
Yeah. All right, Casey, what are you reading?
So I do a lot of professional reading during the school year, but I'm reading a really great one that's called Thanks for the Feedback, on how our emotional responses to feedback that we receive from those in our lives around us.
So is it difficult to balance when you have a lot of professional reading to do? I find this, I get frustrated because I want to read for pleasure, but I have so much professional stuff to do that I don't have time to read for pleasure as much as I want.
Yeah, sometimes I always have a couple books on my nightstand that I want to get into, and eventually I get to them all.
So I'm usually reading like 3 books at a time. Like I'm reading a historical fiction, maybe something related to a sports guy, and then something that's more current events. Any of you guys read more than 1 book at a time?
All the time.
That's a real pain point in the family. I got stacks of books all over, and it's like, I thought you were reading that one. That was yesterday.
I just finished the Katie Couric book.
Okay.
Oh my God, you guys, it's so juicy. There's so much dish in that book. Man, you thought you knew what happened with Matt Lauer? You got to check out that book. It's really, 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 really interesting. All right, let's talk about literacy with our little ones. I love this topic because it's so very, very important. I guess let's start, Corey, with a broad overview. Why is literacy and young literacy so important for our youngest learners?
We've known for some time through the research that literacy and in particular looking at just students being on track at 3rd grade as being just a critical benchmark that predicts their success in school overall and their success beyond school. So that's really the point we're looking at. So we really want to work hard to get our students on track, on pace at that point, and we know then they'll be successful with us.
Casey and Sarah, I'm going to ask you for some of the tools that we use in a moment here, but I first want to get the perspective of a couple of our principals. Let's start with you, Tina. You're with the really, really little ones, and really young is so important. Statistics bear that out. How critical is it that we make sure that 4K, 5K, early elementary school are getting what they need when it comes to reading and literacy?
Yeah, we're really the foundation of their rest of their lives, really. Everyone's literate and reads often. And so we are the foundation of that. They're really truly learning to read, and as they leave us is when they start to read to learn. And so it's critical that we get that foundation set before they move to 3rd grade, like Corey said.
So Brad, you read through the numbers, and 74% of kids who struggle reading will have a very, very hard time ever catching up. Is that a pressure you feel to make sure that you build on what happens with the really little ones and make sure you carry that through? How do you tackle that to make sure we're where we need to be?
Yeah, it is. It's an awesome responsibility, but I think everybody who chooses to be in our schools are here because they value that responsibility. They love being with kids, and they know that we have a big responsibility to get kids ready for success after school. And so, it feels like some pressure and it feels like a big responsibility, but that's why we're here. And I think making sure everybody knows how important their job is and how much we value it helps to motivate us to make sure that we get it right for our kids, because they deserve it.
They do. Sarah, what do you see in our district? It's kind of a general question, but what do you see when you talk literacy in our district?
I see dedicated teachers who are passionate about helping kids learn to read and teaching them how to learn to read. I see kids just immersed in books at all times during the day. They're independently reading. We host different events at our elementary schools around getting kids excited to read and excited about books. So across the board, staff and students from district office all the way to our custodians and our bus drivers are really excited and eager to help our kids learn to read.
Casey, what does the research bear out about how important it is that we get this part of it right?
Yeah. So I think you've heard from a couple members of our team already. If that third grade on proficient, on grade level reading stat is so critical, because what'll happen, students who are falling behind, then that gap continues to get bigger and bigger. So much of what we do as students move through upper elementary into secondary is really digging in, learning about their passions, learning from their teachers and from texts, and it's just so critical for us to get that foundation really solid for them at this age.
The numbers are amazing. 16% of kids struggling in third grade will struggle to graduate from high school. I mean, that's such a big, big number. That
It is.
kindergarten, first, second, third grade, is that the critical phase for making sure we get this right?
Absolutely, and we're so blessed in our district to have 2 elementary schools that can just really set that priority, dig deep, immerse in literacy, and really have an all-in team approach at both Shady Lane and Ben Franklin to get this done for our students.
Tell us a little bit about the work and research of the Casey Foundation.
Yeah, so that was really talking about some of the predictors of third grade reading, and it's really been a driver behind our work in terms of why this matters. Corey did a great job leading with our board around setting that strategic priority. It really helps build that foundation. This is not a bright, shiny object that we're chasing. The research really shows us this is critical, important work for our team to dig in and rally around.
Sarah, how often do we see kids that are really struggling in our district? Is it a big time outlier? Do we see it every year? How frequently do we see kids that really need a lot of intervention and help?
Relatively frequently. Kids develop literacy at different rates, and so we have district grade level benchmarks that we expect, that we're hoping students achieve, and inevitably we have some students that don't achieve those. So what we have built in place of that is some strong interventions with interventionists who are trained. All of them have their reading licenses, and they're really experts at helping kind of tease out what's the roadblock for students learning to read, and helping to either overcome that or remove that roadblock for students.
Brad, are there literally tests in place that catch students that are really having trouble reading? How do we know when a student's really struggling?
Yeah, there are. Maybe not in the traditional sense you think of kindergartners sitting down and taking a test, but teachers are reading with kids every day and are looking for key reading skills. We have some fairly formal reading assessments that can help level kids and know whether we're meeting the benchmarks, like Sarah says, and then a lot of informal assessment too, to know what skills kids are proficient in, what their next skills are, and which ones they're maybe falling short of. So we're kind of in this cycle of teaching kids reading skills and assessing where they're at so that we know next steps. And most of our assessing guides the next step, and some of our assessing tells us where we need a little more strategic intervention with kids.
Brad, are you a better reader, or is your wife a better reader?
Well, that's a big question. Probably
She's gonna
my
see
wife.
this.
Yeah, well, then my wife, yes.
Tina, one of the things I love about how you run the school is that you're involved with the families. It's much more than what happens in the classroom. You know a lot of your families. You know the students, obviously. Your staff knows the students. Talk about the relationship when you know a kid's struggling a little bit. How do you make sure that's communicated to the family? How does that part of it work into making sure the kid gets what they need?
Yeah, it's really about building that partnership with families, and so that way what we're working on at school, they can be working on at home. Sometimes our interventionists will even videotape themselves working with their children and send that home so the parents can actually view, the behaviors, the reading behaviors that the child engages in at school, so that they can also engage in those behaviors at home. And it's also a way that we are educating parents on how to prompt students when they're stuck, instead of just giving the word all the time, how to prompt them and help them with using their strategies along the way. So that partnership is really crucial.
I was really hoping to get through this without asking a question about COVID, but I find myself wondering that first year, especially when kids weren't in the classroom as much and the connections and relationships with their teachers and mentors were different. What did you see, Tina, as far as how that impacted literacy?
that really pushed us to use, like I said, more of those videos and things like that. It connected. We do meetings with parents virtually now, which is really nice because they can meet on their lunch break or in their office or in their car or, you know, things like that. But also it has opened the doors to different ways to communicate with them around, like I said, videotapes. Let me take a video of us working together. We can educate them that way. Bringing them in sometimes in a Zoom meeting while we're working with them so that they can be part of that lesson as well.
You know, I think we take for granted, all of us sitting here and many in our community, that reading is reading, and that you read to your kids when they're little and they learn and they just learn how to read. But not everybody has a home environment that's like that. Brad, how do you work with families to have those basic conversations about make sure you're reading to your kid at night, make sure that they're doing the reading on their homework?
That's a big question, and we know that that's a big piece of what we're doing here. And you know, this priority is divided into a lot of action steps, and that's one that Tina and I are working on, is trying to engage and really rally families around reading. And one of the bigger challenges to that is it starts before we get the kids. You know, we have students in 4K and even a small number of students in 3-year-old preschool, but it starts when kids are toddlers and pre-toddlers. And so those are some of the things that we're trying to come up with. We communicate, with our families frequently, and in an elementary school, we have the benefit of really highly engaged families where we have different reading family events. We've done, even in this time of COVID, we've had a virtual kind of bedtime story event where several teachers were reading over a Zoom meeting, and kids were able to tune in at home and just kind of show that importance. I don't know if the camera can see all the snowflakes hanging from the ceilings of our library right now, but this was part of a family project. 2 families made a snowflake as we did a blizzard of books and reading under the snow with flashlights last week. And so I think just getting kids excited gets families excited. I don't know any parents when a kid comes home and says they want to read where a parent says no. So if we can get kids excited to read, that helps to spread that in family, and then hopefully that those younger siblings are benefiting from that as well.
Casey, what is phonemic awareness?
Yep, so phonemic awareness is really that understanding of sounds, and that sounds are connected to letters, and that letters compose words. And really, Brad, I think, brought up a great point for us to consider here. This focus on early literacy really is a community effort. We welcome our youngest scholars in, some to 3K, 4K, or 5K, but really that language acquisition starts at birth for families. And so we're really pleased with this priority to also be working with the Menominee Falls Collective Impact Group to have brain bags available for residents of Menominee Falls.
What's a brain bag?
A brain bag, they're available at the public library, and there's several different resources in there. So a resource on language acquisition for families, things that they can do very early on with their babies, the newest members of their families, tips on talking to them, having conversations, even though babies obviously aren't having conversations back with them, how to surround their children in language-rich environments. There's also a high-quality text in there for them, other community resources, and we're really just trying to think about this as an all-in community effort.
Sarah, are there common denominators amongst our kids who have a hard time with literacy?
Yes, there are. Many students who struggle to acquire literacy in early grades may have a language deficit or concern. Maybe it has to do with the way they hear language, could be the way that they express their language or they understand language. So that is a big indicator of concern. As Casey mentioned, phonemic awareness, that can be an early indicator that students may require some intervention. So we do early literacy assessments in 4K in kindergarten to assess for phonemic awareness and letter identification. So there can be a whole host of things that can make it difficult for a student to acquire literacy. The biggest thing that I can give to advice for parents is to read, as you mentioned, to read with your children at home, talk with them, play with them, interact with them. Parents and caregivers are children's first teachers, and they can make a world of difference for the information and the knowledge that students come into school with.
Corey, you have good kids. You have successful kids. Did you read at home to your kids when they were young? Was that a regular part of what you did?
Yeah, it was, and I was just fortunate. I'll go all the way back to my mom, who just, surrounded us with books. I remember her throwing away the idiot box, she called it. We didn't have a TV for some time. All we had living in the country was books. And she always was in the library, and so we read a lot. She talked to us like she never baby talked to us, and that's how we raised our kids. And you know, and it just makes for a rich family life too. And that's what I think we're so excited about, is this is about just partnering with families. You know, every parent wants their child to be a successful reader, a successful student, successful in life. And if we could just share some of the knowledge that these people have with those families of what are some small things you can do at home to help your child get on that path, they're going to do it, and we'll be in a great place.
So Brad and Tina, give me one thing that you think, if we're talking about literacy and our youngest students, is the most important thing to think about if you're a family and you want to make sure that your little guy or gal is succeeding. What's at the top of the list?
I would say read, read, read. Just enjoy books, build that excitement for reading, visit the library, make books part of your family, whether it's a routine at night before they go to bed, whether it's in the morning, but make it part of your family routine.
Brad, what do you think?
I'm not sure I can add much to that. I would say exactly right. And I think it's important for kids to see their parents as readers too, and not just sitting down with a book and reading for enjoyment, but I think also pointing out to kids where else that they're reading, whether it's recipes, whether it's signs. I mean, I remember when my kids were really little too, and they were just starting to get that. And maybe it's because I was a teacher and there's a little that teacher nerd in me, but we would point out signs quick. What does that sign say? But I think just having kids notice that there's language everywhere, words everywhere, and that they can read everything, and they're going to need to be able to read everything.
That is great advice. If you'd like more information on what the district's doing, you can go to the district website. There's all sorts of resources there. There's information there. You can get in touch with the district. Make sure you're getting that e-newsletter and all that good stuff as well. I want to thank Corey Gala, Tina Poznansky, Brad Hoffman, Sarah Dorr, and Casey Wilkowiak. Great conversation. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.